Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for our How to Raise Money to Keep Your Community Active webinar with Sport England. We're just allowing a few more people into the room. We will get started properly in a few moments. I can see lots of you using the chat box, which is wonderful. Please do use that to introduce yourselves, let us know whereabouts you're joining us in the country, maybe a little bit about your organisation or even about your project if you've started fundraising with Crowdfunder already. We've got a really jam-packed session today, so let's go over a little bit of housekeeping before we dive straight into the content. We have allowed 60 minutes for this session, and that does include a Q&A at the end. So again, please do use the chat box to put in any questions that you might have for myself about crowdfunding or some of our brilliant panelists as well. We have the wonderful Lucy Gola from Sport England, who's going to be talking about the Movement Fund. So please do pop any questions about that wonderful funding opportunity into that chat box. And also Leanne James as well, who's joining us to talk about her recent project. So there's nothing better than hearing from a project owner exactly what's involved with running a successful campaign. So again, pop some questions in there for Leanne. This is a live session. The whole session is being recorded, and you will receive a link to the replay of this session as part of a follow-up email from ourselves. You'll also receive links to all of the resources that we discussed throughout the session too. So keep an eye on your inbox for that email after today's event. Now, if you find you have any issues with your internet connection, the best thing to do is just to leave the webinar and then follow the registration link to come straight back into the live room. You probably won't have access to the previous comments in that chat box, so just drop a message in there and we can make sure that we bring you back up to speed. Now, if you find that you can see the slide, but I'm kind of hovering over the top of it somewhere, please do use the view option just in the top right-hand side of your screen and select side-by-side speaker view. That should move my video away from the slide and you'll be able to see the content in its entirety. Okay, so first of all, let's think about in terms of being an organisation which may be reliant solely on grant funding, maybe you have revenue streams as well. You might have found that actually the recent kind of grant landscape is really competitive and you might not have had some successful bids recently. It's really important to be thinking about how to diversify your income streams as an organisation. That will lead to some really strong financial resilience for yourselves, and it will also help to increase your financial stability. The reason that's important is if you are always reliant on a particular pot of funding, if that pot of funding goes away, you might find that actually you are in need or desperate need of income and resources. So the best thing to be thinking about is having your finger in lots of different pies in order to bring in revenue from different areas. Now, crowdfunding could play a really important part in that, and we'll look at the reasons as to why a little bit later on in the session. But it's a great thing to be thinking about as an organisation. How can we make sure that we are bringing in revenue from different areas, not just those traditional grants that you might have been reliant on up to this point? So in terms of crowdfunding as a concept, some of you may be familiar with it already. For some of you, this could be a completely new idea and a completely new way of raising money. So crowdfunding essentially is raising funds from those around you within your community. Crowdfunder UK has been around for roughly 14 years now, and we are the UK's leading rewards-based crowdfunding platform. What that means is project owners have the ability to add rewards onto their campaign pages, which essentially means they can give something back to their supporters. And it's a brilliant way to actually incentivize people's giving and get them giving a little bit more to your campaign. So how does crowdfunding work? Well, first of all, you would come along to crowdfunder.co.uk and you would create an account with us, which is a free to access account. You would then start creating a unique campaign page. And with that, you're going to tell your story and explain your idea to your crowd, so your community. You'd set a target of how much money you need to raise, and you'd decide how long you need in order to raise that money. You can also add those rewards at that point and check to see if you might be eligible for any of our extra funding opportunities that we have available. So we work with lots of different match funding organisations across the country. We work with local authorities all the way through to corporate organisations that have pots of funding available to eligible projects. Our amazing system will match you and your project with any of these funders that could be a good fit for you. And it's always advisable to apply for those funds while you're in the stages of creating that campaign page. You would then go on to launch your project. So you're going to set that project live on our website. We will host that project for you, and you're going to share that link to the project page into your community and your networks in order to bring people to look at the page and make those donations in order to raise the funds needed. Now, for all of you on the call today, there is going to be a financial need. There's going to be a reason why you need to raise the money in order to get that project and that idea happening. What you might not have considered is the different benefits that come along with crowdfunding in order to raise that money. The most important is going to be that validation that you will get from actually creating that page, launching it, promoting it to the public and your network around you. It's a brilliant way to build confidence in that idea and to actually test the water to see if those around you want to see that project come to life. Again, you're going to raise awareness by doing that. Launching a project can help to create a buzz around your idea. It's a brilliant way to see if you can maybe increase those participation numbers, really connect with those beneficiaries that you're going to be reaching out to when the project is delivered. And it can really help to get you noticed by a wider audience. So it will kind of push you and test you to reach outside of your comfort zone, whereas you might have a really brilliant relationship with your existing members or your existing participants. We are tasking you with going out there, shouting about who you are and the great things that you do, and building upon those relationships and really kind of increasing your audience and your crowd. Everybody that does donate to your campaign or even share your campaign with their networks will automatically become an advocate, not only of your project, but of you as an organisation and maybe even of the sport as well. We here at Crowdfunder, we are advocates for projects that resonate with us, that we see come through our platform. We talk about them in our company meetings. We have a project of the week, for example. And anybody that's donating your campaign to your campaign will have a similar view. They will talk about the wonderful things that you're doing to their friends and their families. And that helps to build some really lovely, meaningful connections going forward. Now, some of this might be completely new to you. You might not have done any fundraising digitally. You might not feel very confident with networking or self-promotion or even telling that engaging story. So developing those skills by using the resources that we have on hand for you will be really beneficial, not only for this campaign, but potentially for other areas of the organisation and to help build that confidence within you and your team. And then, of course, we have the extra funding available, which is a massive USP for Crowdfunder UK. We're the only platform that enables you to crowdfund and then kind of have that match funding in the way that we do. We're going to hear from Lucy, who's going to talk through the Sport England match funding. I just want to make you aware that there is a whole section of our website dedicated to our extra funding partners. It's always a great idea to see who could be a good fit for your project. You can apply to more than one extra funding partner, and you can receive more than one pledge from these funding partners too. So you could be matched with Sport England and a local authority, for example, and both of those organisations could put an extra funding pledge onto your campaign. So it's a brilliant way to boost your fundraising potential. We often get asked why sports and physical activity projects crowdfund so well. And in a nutshell, it's because you have a ready-made crowd. You have so many things that we ask of people to be able to have a successful crowdfunding campaign. So you have those that you already engage with. You've got a network at your fingertips from those that participate in your sport, that interact with your organisation. You all have a shared passion, and quite often taking part in sport and physical activity, you need to have a level of resilience and drive in order to do that. And that is really important when running a crowdfunding campaign too. No doubt you'll have a team of people around you, whether that's fellow volunteers or a committee or a steering group. It might be other members, parents of members. We often see that there's a very passionate parent that comes along and kind of helps to crowdfund when it comes to a youth squad or organisation. And you are going to be known in your community. We know that sports clubs, sports organisations are often the hubs of their community. They often already do incredible community engagement and have a really strong positive impact on the communities around them. So it's building upon that and using that kind of existing identity within their communities to really promote all of the wonderful things that you're doing. The other thing that you can do, which is a bit of fun, is setting some fundraising challenges or activities for your community members around you. If you have facilities, you might want to host a fundraising day. You might want to speak to the local schools, local organisations, and see if you can set a fundraising challenge. And that's a really great way to give some kind of ownership to the community to help raise the money needed. We often talk about networks and crowds, and I mentioned that you're going to have this ready-made crowd around you, and that could also include the business community that may already be sponsoring you, for example. It could be other organisations that you have strong working relationships with, and that can make sourcing rewards that much easier, and also people sharing your project. Lean upon those networks to be able to push your story and your link to your project page out there even further. It might even be that there is some alumni within the community or even a celebrity who has come through the ranks of your organisation or who is really pivotal in your sport or physical activity that might just be able to reshare, add a comment of support, or maybe even a donation, or maybe an appearance at a community fundraising day. So think outside of the box, shoot for the stars. Nothing's too ridiculous when it comes to kind of lofty promotion. It might not happen, but it definitely won't happen unless you try. So it's worth giving everything a go. And then, as I mentioned, of course, that community impact that we all know is so important for sports organisations. What you're doing already is having such a positive impact. Make sure you highlight that in everything that you're doing and talk about how that will increase when you're able to deliver whatever it is that you're raising money for. Okay, before we meet our guest project owner, just want to talk through some of the numbers of the impact of crowdfunding for sports so far. So in the time that we've been working with our sports funding partners, so that over the years has been Sport England, Sport Wales, Sport Northern Ireland and British Cycling, we have seen more than 7,000 projects adding to our platform. They've been matched with these sports funders, and we've been able to distribute more than £11.3 million to these organisations. And that is solely from our sports funding partners. That doesn't include the local authorities that might have got involved as well, or some of our corporate organisations that may well have pledged on that campaign too. Those projects have been backed by more than 450,000 individuals within their communities, and collectively they've raised more than £39.5 million. And that's all going back into those community organisations, grassroots organisations 99% of the time. And just think about that impact that that's going to have on those communities. Okay, so let's meet somebody who's done all of this really successfully in recent months. Leanne, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, hi.
Hiya, would you mind telling us a little bit about your bike track project? I'll share a link to it in the chat now so everyone can have a little look, but I will be quiet and let you talk through your project.
Hi, everyone. So first of all, I'll just say that Cainscross Town Council is quite a small town council. We cover 7,000 residents in an area of Stroud. We have quite a few public spaces, and in one of our public spaces, we had an old bike track, a pump track, which was first built by the community in the 1980s, and it had become worn, basically not fit for purpose, and the kids were taking shovels to it themselves. So for a couple of years before I rocked up in the council, they knew that they wanted to replace it. So it was decided to replace it for like for like. So it's a nice natural track built of aggregates and earth and limestone, but by a specialist bike company. So that was our project, to build a community bike pump track and a set of bike jumps in one of the parks that we own here in Stroud.
Amazing. And we've met before, haven't we? I said as soon as you
Yeah.
popped on the call, I said, I recognize that face. So Leanne's been to a couple of our drop-in sessions that we host where you can come along and ask anything about crowdfunding. And at that stage, I remember talking to you and thinking, well, we're a parish council and I'm not 100% sure how this is going to fit. And I'm not sure, but maybe crowdfunding is right. Would you mind talking us through that kind of thought process? Why did you decide to crowdfund in the end?
Okay, so a little bit of background is I used to work prior to here for Gloucestershire Rural Community Council, and one of my jobs was to advise the VCSE sector on finding funding and making applications. So I knew a bit about crowdfunding, but it was always something that whenever you talked about it, people were a little bit skeptical. It kind of sounds like an awful lot of hard work. Would it be successful, etc., etc.? And I have to be honest, I was of a similar ilk. So when we got to the point where we had about £30,000 for our track from different sources, but we wanted between 40 and 50, maybe a bit more, I made an application to Sport England for funding, who very kindly said yes, but because it's a capital build project, the offer came through not in the form of a straightforward grant, but of the crowdfund and match pledge. We decided that we wouldn't take the whole offer because we were a little bit hesitant as to the support we would have. And we settled for asking for £5,000 from the community, which would give us another £5,000 from Sport England and would take us up to that £40,000, the bare minimum that we needed. So yeah, I was a bit hesitant myself, thinking I've got a heavy workload, this is going to be a lot of work, can we do it? But I'm so glad that we did.
I'm really glad you did as well. I feel like this is a lovely story of kind of just giving it a go and kind of seeing what happens. And you were very kind of tactical in your thinking as well, thinking, okay, we feel a little bit like we might not be able to reach all of what we had hoped for in that grant. Let's kind of be, a bit more cautious, I guess, for want of a better word. You've obviously smashed that target. You've got that £10,000, well, 10,293 from 120 supporters. So that target does include £5,000 from Sport England, but essentially you've had 120 members of your community say, yeah, this is great. We want to back this. Do you think now, looking back, that the benefits that I've kind of outlined in this session and that support you've had from the community, does that outweigh the kind of feeling of this is going to be a big job and I'm a little bit hesitant?
Yeah, when you had your slide up with the benefits, I've written underneath, totally agree, because there is no. I'm very proactive in speaking to people and making sure that organisations know who we are and I know who they are. That includes local businesses as well, and it was it was an opportunity to put ourselves in front of the community in a way that nothing else we did really gave. You have to be prepared to go for it. That's what I would say. And but if you go for it, the benefits that we've received from community support and also how it validates that track. We have near neighbours to the park who they didn't want the track to be replaced. And I understand why, but the benefits that it brought far outweighed that £10,000.
Amazing. That's really, really good to hear. And I think it's something that doesn't always come as part of that thinking process, when you're planning to raise money, of course, everybody's thinking we need the money to do the thing, and everything else might just kind of happen naturally after we've done it and we've built it. But actually, the process of kind of running a crowdfunder in order to raise that money means that all of those things come a little bit earlier. And then actually, by the time you're building the thing, you've already got this group of people that are like, what's happening? When's it opening? And you've got this excitement. You actually mentioned a little bit earlier that you are very, very close to opening the bike track.
We are. I will also say as well that we managed to get a funding application I put in came good 2 days after we started our campaign. So yeah, our track will be finished this week, and then it needs a period of settlement. So yeah, we got on with it rather quickly, but there's no doubt that the public support has built up such an interest around it that we have to have a soft opening because the hordes of people are just going to be a bit unmanageable. Um,
That's a nice problem to have, though, hey?
it is a lovely problem to have. It really is.
In terms of, I've mentioned rewards a few times in this session so far, in terms of kind of sourcing those rewards, because you had a lovely selection on there and people can have a little look at your page and get a bit of inspiration. How did you find sourcing those rewards, those conversations with people in order to try and get them involved with donating maybe a reward to the campaign? How did that go for you?
Um, I think this is where you need to put your creative hat on. And first of all, think, okay, what can we as an organization offer as a reward? If you're building something, whatever you're building, that gives you opportunities. So we were able to offer the person to break ground, £50, and you can claim to be the person who breaks ground on the build. And then see what else you can offer. So we have a community hall here, as you can see. So we could offer some periods of hall hire if you gave a certain amount. Also, we have a lot of dogs that visit the park and we love to give them treats. So I came up with Pavilion Pups. The building I'm in is called Pavilion in the Park. So if somebody gave us £10, they could claim to have the photo of their dog in the pavilion and online as one of our Pavilion Pups. And that was lovely because I could go out and talk to dog walkers about it, who talk to each other and put the £10 in to get their picture of the dog. And with local businesses, I think it's about being, again, yes, haircuts and vouchers for this and free fish and chips, etc. And people are actually quite happy to give that if you go and speak to them. We're very lucky in Stroud. We have a wonderful company. Luckily, I know the person who owns it, where they're the world leaders in snow and winter effects for TV and film. And he doesn't give tours, but I talked them into giving a tour for up to 6 people of what they do. And we had a draw for that. So if somebody gave £10, they could enter the draw to win this tour. So I think it's about seeing what you can do first of all, and then drawing on everything else and asking the people who work for you, is there something that you do as a hobby, or do you have a little sideline that you can offer as a reward, and just trying to give a bit of variety, really. And I think that even if people don't pledge for that particular reward, it kind of draws their eye.
I think, yeah, that's really key, isn't it? And almost making that offer mutually beneficial. So if there is, a small business locally, you can go and say to them, well, we'll pin you to the top of our social media pages for a day or, a few days, or we'll shout about you in our updates and our promotion if you would please offer a voucher or whatever it might be. So it's that collaborative approach, isn't it? Where actually the community as a whole are making this happen and driving it forward. And that was really, really key on your project. Really, really clear to see. Leanne, would you be able to stay with us for the Q&A at the end? Because I'm sure there's going to be some questions coming through for you.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'll pull the slides back up a moment and I'll see you a little bit later on. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks.
Really lovely to hear then from Leanne. Do take a look at that page because it's such a lovely project and such a well curated page with some great rewards. So definitely use that as a bit of inspiration. Now, to talk through the extra funding offer from Sport England, we've got the lovely Lucy Gola joining us today. Hi, Lucy.
Hi there.
Hello. That was a nice, joyous chorus.
Well, I waited to say good morning, and then I realised it's 12:30. It's not morning anymore.
It feels a bit like it, doesn't it, today?
Yeah, not
Um,
had lunch yet, so
no,
yeah.
exactly, exactly. It's not afternoon until we've eaten. That's the rule. Right. So, are you happy to talk us through the movement fund? I'll turn my camera off and just give me a nod when you'd like me to move the slides.
Absolutely. So, yeah, Sport England is one of the crowdfunder extra funders, as well as it sort of standing alone as our own fund. You can apply for anything from £300 to £15,000 available per project. And that's available over a 12-month period. So if you apply now, you couldn't reapply for another 12 months. Our movement fund has three, I guess, results. So you might be unlucky and not be successful, or you could receive a grant, which is exactly what it says. So it could be up to £15,000, or as we've been talking about with Leanne and with Zoe, you could receive up to 50% of your project application as a pledge onto your crowdfunder campaign, which is where we appear as an extra funder, so we can contribute to your crowdfunding campaign. Now, the main aim of the Movement Fund is to help get inactive people active. We do have priority audiences that we want to work with as part of the fund, but any not-for-profit organisation can apply. So whether you're a charity, a voluntary sports club, a CIC, we are looking at funding not-for-profit organisations. As long as you demonstrate to us that you've identified a real need for that project. So it might be that you've got wait lists for attendance. It might be that you've got specific access issues with a facility that is a priority for yourselves, and you realise it's creating barriers for people attending. It could be that your potential participants have been asking about something in particular that you're not offering, but there's clearly a real demand for it and people are wanting it. So you need to be able to tell us something quite specific about what it is you need when you make that application to us. So what are the barriers that the group of people that you're working with potentially are trying to overcome? What is it that's preventing them taking part as your facility currently is? We've funded quite a range of different types of projects through the crowdfunding side of things or through our grants relating to facility improvements, activity delivery. It might be working with young mums and young children. It could be working with young carers. It could be those with dementia or a long-term health condition, something which is a priority for your area and you feel that there is definitely lacking, but you do need to be able to back that up with evidence. So how do you know? Do you want to go on to the next slide, please? So as I said, we have the Movement Fund, which you could come through our website. If you're not crowdfunding yet, and you've not started your crowdfunding campaign page, you can come directly through our website, which will take you straight through. And at that point, once we've assessed your application, we will come back to you with a decision. And at that point, it could be that you get the grant or you get a contribution to your crowdfunding campaign. Now, some people are already intent on crowdfunding, and I've spoken to a number of people over this last week, actually. It's the route they want to take. They're really keen. They've got a crowdfunding campaign set up in draft on the crowdfunder platform. You will then see us as an extra funder. Hopefully, if you've ticked the right boxes, whether that's physical activity, community spaces, environmental also comes up, increased physical activity, improved mental health. Those are the kind of things that will prompt crowdfunder to highlight to your campaign that we will be available as an extra funder potentially for your campaign. And at that point, you can complete a short application form, send it through to us. We refer to it as the side door, but ultimately you've already made a commitment to crowdfund. We want to help you through that process. So you will come through to us. We will assess it as we would other applications, hopefully try and get it through a little bit quicker, because particularly if your crowdfunding campaign is already live, the clock is ticking, we want to help you do that. And we will support you through that process. So if it's already live, great. We can also then help you add improvements to the page, talk you through the process, just support you through all the way through, really. And we would do exactly the same if you come in through our front door. If you receive a pledge, we can talk you through that process. You'll be allocated a case officer. Myself, I'm one, my colleague Becky. And we have about 6 other people who will be able to hold your hand through that process if it's not something that you've tackled before, alongside Zoe and her amazing support team, obviously, as well. And the next slide. Was that me done? Here we go. This is what I was already talking about. So this is sort of the side door where if you've already committed yourself to crowdfunding, you will see us pop up as potentially an extra funder. And if you click on the Find Out More button, if you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, that will appear on the right-hand side of your draft page when you're working through the dashboard. And if you click on the Find Out More button, that will take you to where you can complete the application that will then submit your campaign to us. Okay.
Thank you so much, Lucy. Well, I love listening to you because you're such an advocate for crowdfunding, and you've worked with us, haven't you, for a while now on different kind of funds that we've partnered with Sport England to distribute. And Lucy is an absolute pro when it comes to how to crowdfund successfully. So, as she mentioned, she's one of the case officers for Sport England, and you do have support from the case officer team. You have support from ourselves at Crowdfunder as well. So there's lots available to you, isn't there, Lucy? We want to get this money where it needs to be. We want to see projects
absolutely
raise what they need to. So
there's loads of resources. Go for it, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, no, it's fine. I'm just going to say, do make use of those resources and do kind of engage with the case officers when you're allocated one as well, because all of it's going to help you to have a successful campaign. Lucy, are you happy to stick around for the Q&A as well?
Absolutely. Yep, no problem at all.
Thank you. We'll see you a little bit later on.
Cheerio.
Thank you. So yeah, as Lucy mentioned there, when you start putting your page together, there are a few different things that you need to do and to complete in terms of creating that draft page. Once the computer or the platform, the system, if you like, knows whereabouts you are in the country from the information that you've inputted, a little bit about your organisational structure. So whether you are a CIC or a CASC or a charity, for example, and then also those project aims that Lucy just covered as well. So it's all a tick box exercise. So super time efficient, nice and straightforward, and that system will match you with any of our funding partners that it thinks will be a good fit for you. Sport England Movement Fund, no doubt, will be one of those. You could see some other funding partners as well that you could be eligible to apply for. So do put in as many applications as you can. Lucy highlighted there, it is a short application form, normally around 10 to 15 minutes for each application attached to your crowdfunding campaign. We always recommend taking a look at those application questions first, and then maybe creating a Word document or something similar with those answers. You know, go back to your committee or, you know, your board of directors, whoever it might be, get all of the relevant information that you need, and maybe have that as a Word document that you can just copy and paste then into these different application forms. That will save you even more time. Once you've submitted those applications through your crowdfunding campaign dashboard, so your kind of admin dashboard, those will get sent directly to our funding partners and they will assess those and make a decision on your application. Many of our funding partners will also look at your campaign page in order to get a whole picture about who you are. So it's a good idea to actually have started curating that page as well and filling it with some great information about yourselves, maybe some lovely images as well, before you've put in those applications. That will just help to really enhance your application, your project idea, so that our funding partners can see the whole picture and really understand what you're all about and how you're hoping to deliver your impactful project. Okay, a little bit about the mechanics of the funding itself. So we're going to say that you've set up a draft campaign, you've applied for the Sport England Movement Fund, and you've been accepted. So you're really excited. You cannot wait to launch your campaign. What you're going to do now is you're going to talk to those that are around you, really close to the project. So that might be friends, family, maybe your trustees, your committee, maybe some members. Let them know when you're going to launch your project. You're going to set your project live and you're going to go back to that group of people and say, right, it's live on the platform. Now's the time to make your donations, please. Those people are going to donate on your project, and it's going to be a really great catalyst for when you start promoting that project to others. They'll take a look at it and see that you've already raised a bit of money. That in itself is going to create a huge amount of validation. It's going to make your project look very credible because actually it's already got support in the opening hours of it going live. All right. So make sure you plan for that. You plan your go live date and you know you've got some pledges landing on that day. What you need to aim for is a really important milestone with your fundraising. You need to raise 25% of your initial target, and that is the target that you have set for your campaign. You also need to reach that from donations from at least 25 individual supporters. So raise 25% from 25 individual supporters. At that point, you will see the pledge from Sport England land on your project page. The amount that you've raised will leap up in your progress bar. And all of a sudden, everyone's really excited. You've just got a massive pledge from Sport England. You now need to go back out to your crowd and raise the remaining money to hit your target. Use that pledge as motivation, as a catalyst to then promote your project even further and say, look, we need to hit this target to secure that funding from Sport England. When you reach 100% of your target, you have secured everything that you have raised to that point. You've secured everything raised from your crowd and also, crucially, the pledge from Sport England. That is the time to celebrate, of course, shout about your success. However, you might find that you still have a bit of time left on your live campaign. And this can be a really great time to maybe set a stretch target. Do you need to raise a little bit more in order to make your project really sing? What are those things that weren't a necessity, but would make your project even more exciting? Think about setting an additional goal for your supporters to aim for, and then start promoting that campaign. Keep going with it until your deadline hits. There's nothing that says you have to stop at your target. Reach beyond that if you've got time and capacity to do so. Okay, advice on all of that is available on the website as well, but just be mindful that you do need to reach your target to secure the extra funding from Sport England. Okay, well then how do you do it? How do you connect with a crowd and bring in those donations? The best thing to do is think about this in the planning stages of your campaign. Think about your community as a whole and then break them down into accessible groups of people. So within that, you might have friends and family. You could have, people that interact with you on social media. So that could be Facebook, TikTok, X, Instagram, whatever works for you, wherever you have the most engagement, focus on that. You don't need to suddenly start lots of different social media channels just to try and kind of spread that audience. Use what is already working for you. You might have existing business partners or sponsors. They will form their own kind of network. And then also think about those other organizations that you have within your community. That could be schools, community groups, other sports clubs, with partners as well. That could be things like suppliers. If you've got a clubhouse that has a bar and a bit of a food service, you might have suppliers that you engage with regularly. Within each of these groups, think about how would you best contact them? What is going to resonate the most about your story with that group? So for, let's say, those local businesses that have been sponsoring you up until now, or maybe they haven't for a few years, you want to go back to them and say, one of our rewards is a discounted sponsorship. It's pitch side sponsorship, or it's sponsoring the kit or the equipment. We'll put your logo onto whatever we're raising money for at a reduced rate for the first 6 months, first 12 months. That might incentivize them, and it's going to be a mutually beneficial kind of relationship. Whereas talking to your friends and family, that's going to be a different conversation. They want to back you as individuals as much as they will do the project. If you're talking to your members or your beneficiaries, the message that you're conveying to them is, how will this benefit them? Raising this money is going to be great because it's going to enable you to X, Y, and Z. So always think about the most applicable narrative or most applicable story for that group of people and the best way to contact them. Is it an email? Is it picking up the phone? Is it a newsletter? Is it doing an open day, sitting around getting community feedback and actually having some in-person conversation? Maybe it's posters and leaflets for certain demographics as well. Really try to avoid just having one message and kind of blanket promoting across all of these different areas of your network, it will not yield as good a results as if you are personable in your approach as much as you can be. And that can be quite challenging. And that's why it's great to have others with you that can help you to do that. And you can kind of divvy up the jobs and the roles and kind of delegate as much as you can as well. I've mentioned a lot about extra funding, just to give you a kind of insight into the types of organisations that we work with. You can find all of our extra funding partners on the website as well. So do take a look, see what's available, see what might fit with your campaign, and do apply for everything and anything that you think you might be a good fit for. Okay, when it comes to telling your story, the most successful and engaging campaigns make sure that they are really reader friendly. And what I mean by that is there's nice, clear and bold titles. They are picking out key information as well, maybe in bold text. They are flooding their pages with images, because we all know that a picture can tell 1,000 words. So use pictures of people, use pictures of the impact that you're already having. Maybe you've got something that you can show some kind of plans, or maybe a mock-up of what it might look like if it's a capital works, for example. But do make the page as engaging as possible and try and have those different stories on there. So people reading it, there's going to be a group of people that know everything about you because they come to your sessions every week and they've been hearing about this project for the last few months. So actually they know everything. However, what is it that's engaging them? It's going to be maybe that community impact. It's going to be maybe some great pictures of even themselves on there. And then there's going to be a group of people who don't know that you are a charity or a community interest company and you are pretty reliant on grant funding and fundraising. And actually, these are the great things that you've done for your community. So make sure you give a really solid, cohesive picture of who you are and what you do, and do shout about that community impact at every single stage. Make it visually engaging. Add a video if you can. That's a great way to get people's interest in a short amount of time. It doesn't have to be a long video. It doesn't have to be professionally shot, over scripted, professionally edited. Something captured on a phone, with somebody speaking from the heart about why this project is important to them and their community is so impactful. And if you can do that in about a minute or a minute and a half, that's a great way for people to get all the information they need in a really short amount of time, and to give them an inkling into what you're doing, and it might even spur them on to make a donation just off the back of that. And it's a great way to then promote your campaign. You can share that video into your promotion too. In terms of rewards, there are all sorts of things that you can offer, and Leanne spoke about some really brilliant ones. Get creative. Think about what you can offer as an organisation. Also think about what others around you could be offering. And we've seen everything come through the platform. We've had like bunny boarding hotel, so a hotel that actually did stays for rabbits. I've never heard of that before, but it exists. And they offered a discount for a stay. We've had people who will actually create merchandise purely for the crowdfunder. That obviously involves a little bit of money, so make sure you account for that when you're setting your project target. We've had people offering their accounting services, discounts on products and discounts on nights out, hotel stays, all sorts of things. Get creative as well. What can you do as an organisation which is a bit fun, a bit silly, that people want to get engaged with? We've had some really great statistics come back from Sport England, from a fund that we helped distribute recently. And what they saw when they did a kind of deep dive on the data was that projects that had offered no rewards to 5 rewards, so between 0 and 5 rewards, on average, they had around 106 supporters. And again, the crowd pledge on average was just over £50. Other projects, so they had lots of different tiers when it came to the amount of projects that they were offering, but this was the kind of uppermost tier. Projects that were offering more than 21 rewards, that's quite a huge amount of rewards, but you can add them on as the project is live. You don't have to put them all on at once. You can drip feed rewards on, and that's another reason to kind of promote and kind of re-engage people with the campaign. Those projects saw on average 153 supporters, and actually that average crowd pledge almost doubled. It shot up to just over £90. So they can be really valuable if you have capacity to add those on. And as Leanne said, it's a great way to engage and promote the campaign within those different groups. So within the business community, for example. We mentioned like the fundraising days. This is a great way to get your community behind you and maybe get some of the younger members of the community, so schools, colleges involved by hosting kind of fundraising days. You can actually link these fundraisers to your main campaign page. And that's something that the Brighton Surf Lifesaving Club did. What you will see on their page is there's actually a button that you can select to become a fundraiser. And that will prompt you to set up your own little mini campaign page. You don't enter any of your own financial details. You don't need to worry about any of that side of it. It all directly links to the main page. It just gives you the ability to add your own pictures, maybe your own short video, and promote that to your own networks. And that can be a great way to bring others into this collaborative way of fundraising as well. Okay, we have got loads of support available to help you get there. We want you to succeed. So with that, we have webinars such as this that run frequently with Sport England and ourselves. We've got an incredible knowledge hub, which is full of all of the guides and the hints and tips that you need for every stage of this process. We've also got a wonderful customer support team who have actually created the whole of our help centre. So do check there first. But if you do have any technical difficulties or you just have some questions that you're just not sure on, please do get in touch with our support team and they will make sure your questions land with the relevant member of our crowdfunder team. And a live project dashboard. So you can actually look at what's happening with your campaign and you can manage every single aspect of it from that dashboard as well. Okay, thank you so much. That is the end of our slide content for today. I appreciate we've gone through a huge amount. And for some of you, you might be thinking, oh my goodness, this is a lot, which is why those resources are there. So please do engage with us after these sessions. If anybody has any questions, now is the time to pop them into the chat box or the Q&A. I'd like to welcome Leanne and Lucy and Becky, who's been holding down the fort in the chat box throughout the whole session, to join me on screen, and let's see if we've had any questions come through. I know you've answered quite a few, Becky, haven't you, in the Q&A little tab. Is there anything that you would like to go over that you've noticed coming through?
No, it was just, I think Caroline had asked a question further on up about the amount of match funding available through Sport England. So we can match 50% of the campaign target, up to £15,000, as long as the project fits the movement fund criteria. And then there was a couple on the Q&A as well. But probably if you don't feel that that your question's been answered, the best thing to do is to give us a call on the helpline. Or if you want to talk over your project and your approach to your application, you can give us a call, which I think the details we've shared, but myself or Lucy can pop in the chat now as well.
Amazing, thank you. This is a question for Leanne, actually. How long did your campaign run for?
7 weeks, I believe. So we actually ended on 15th of December. So that gives you a little bit of a mental conundrum as to whether people are happy to give to you just before Christmas. But we were thinking 6 weeks, and I think it was 7 weeks we went for or thereabouts.
Which just highlights, doesn't it, that it can actually be quite a short turnaround between, and I appreciate that there's probably a fair bit of planning that I imagine people are already starting to think about now in order to do it successfully. And we always recommend do put a fair amount of time into the planning. That's probably the most crucial stage. But actually, from going live with a campaign to closing a campaign to then receiving the money is actually quite a quick turnaround versus some of the more traditional kind of grant applications. Would you agree, Leanne?
I would, absolutely, especially when some of them want the project to be finished before they give you any money, or they want reports, interim reports. But I'd already done an awful lot of work before we went live, so we were ready to go. And I would say that would be one of my biggest pieces of advice. Get ready to go. Think about how you're going to do it. Make your contacts, make new contacts, put it out there that you're starting a campaign. So if you've got Facebook and social medias that are well read, put it out there way before you start. Well, when I say way before we start, I think we did it about 4 weeks before we started. So it means you hit the ground running. You want to hit the ground running. And we did a video with help from some of the local lads, with help from a member of the community who was one of those that first helped build the track in the 80s, and thinking about all those things and just having it there. And what was lovely was that a local printer came forward. He put £250 in the pot on day one, I think it was, and then offered to do us a load of banners for nothing. So people came out of the woodwork who we hadn't expected to.
That's really lovely. And we often hear stories like that. And I think that just harps back to those benefits I mentioned, that actually putting yourself out there quite publicly, because quite often a lot of this fundraising happens almost behind closed doors when it comes to kind of writing those grant applications and bid writing and things. And actually this almost forces people to do it in public view. It's like, we're doing this is the need, this is what we're trying to do. And we've had all sorts of wonderful things, like a local kind of trade shop. I remember there was a football club and they were redoing all of their clubhouse, and they said, well, actually we can give you a little bit of money, but we've got some ex display kitchens, do you want one just to fit out the kitchen? That wouldn't have happened had all of this happened, behind closed doors. So opening up those conversations, I think, is really lovely and can lead to some great things. And actually members of the community that might not necessarily be able to give financially can give in those kinds of ways, whether it be time or resources. And that's really lovely to hear. In terms of the movement fund then, Becky and Lucy, and the kind of time frames for people maybe applying and receiving those answers, what would you be advising them to factor in their time frame of planning in terms of putting in that application and maybe getting an answer on that application from yourselves?
If someone had already got a crowdfunding campaign that was in draft, and they were going to come in through the side door, so that's within the crowdfunder platform, we try to get a decision back out to you within 3 weeks. That is what we're aiming for. We have a fortnightly moderation session, which we call a panel review. That's just where our assessors are able to share ideas, ask questions of each other, make sure we're consistent with our decision making. And we have to factor that in. So it does have to fit into that 2-week schedule. So ideally, we will try and get a decision back to you within 3 weeks. And at that point, you'll get a communication from us and we can start chatting to you about any improvements on the page we think will make it better. It's entirely up to you if you want to set it live, but there may be improvements that we will feed back to you that can make it even better. So it depends on whether you want to really go full blown and launch it when it's not quite ready, or whether you want to wait for a little bit of hand holding, bit of chat about it. We can always give you a call and can discuss the page person to person, and then set it live. In an ideal world, try not to set your page for longer than 8 weeks. Then at least if you are doing okay, but you don't think you've quite reached it, you've got somewhere to extend to. You can, if you get there and you can see that, oh God, we're about £1,000 short, but we've got an event coming up, or you've got a plan for a different social media type of campaign, different audience to communicate with, have a plan and we can always support you in extending it. That's not a problem.
Thank you. That was one of the questions that came through, actually. So yes, there is an option to extend your campaign, close early if you've absolutely smashed it and you just want to get to a point where you can draw the money down. I guess ultimately, if you've been approved for any of our extra funding from our partners, the key thing is communication. So as Lucy just mentioned, if you've got an event coming up and you just need a bit more time, or actually you've realised that there's been a bit of a hurdle with the project delivery and actually you might need to tweak what you're asking for or the things that it's going to cover, just make sure that you're communicating with our partners. They are all very, very approachable. They always are there on hand to listen. As I mentioned many times, we want to see the money get to where it needs to get to and these projects happen. Another great question that's quickly come through is, if I don't hit my target, what happens? And that comes up a lot. And I don't want to bombard you with lots of kind of information because it's all there for you to read around the subject in our resources. But ultimately, when you crowdfund, there are two ways that you can do it. So you can either choose to be what we call flexible funding or keep what you raise, or you can choose to be an all or nothing campaign. An all or nothing campaign essentially means if you don't hit your target, then Crowdfunder will refund all of your supporters. We take that kind of admin out of it. Unfortunately, you've not raised what you needed to, and so we'll refund everybody. You get to choose the way that you do this, by the way, so this is completely up to you. If you are a Keep What You Raise campaign, you might be able to make use of any money that you raise, whether it's £5 or £50,000, in which case, when you close, if you've raised any money at all, you will be deemed successful and you will receive a payout from the money you raised from your crowd. And the reason I'm emphasising crowd here is that part of the Sport England Movement Fund T's and C's is that you have to reach your target to receive their money. Okay, so if you were Keep What You Raise and didn't hit your target, unfortunately, you would forego the Sport England pledge, but you'd still keep everything that you'd raised from your community. So you have a think about what fits with your needs the most. And then you opt for whichever way is more suitable for you. But I would always recommend that if you've been approved for extra funding and they need you to hit your target, that's what you're striving for. Okay, make that your goal, is to reach that target and put everything into it. That way you're going to be incredibly happy when you come away with all of that money that you've raised. Okay, we've got a few specifics in terms of questions about specific eligibility for projects. And I know that Becky and Lucy have put the contact details into the chat box there. I am just going to share our final slide, which has also got the contact details on for ourselves as well as Sport England. And all that really remains to say is a massive, massive thank you to all of my panelists today. So Leanne, thank you so much for joining me and congratulations on such a wonderful campaign. And to Lucy and Becky as well for all of your insights and for holding down the chat box, Becky, with answering all of those questions. Thank you. We will make sure that everything we've spoken about today you have access to. We'll send out an email with those resources and also a replay for today to share with all of your team. And come and speak to us, pop to a drop-in, come and engage with us, and we are all here to support you, and we wish you the best of luck with your campaigns and your fundraising. Thank you so much.